Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Tonight on the Evan Miller Report, Dinesh says it's responsible for the attacks in Texas over the weekend. But the White House says it's too soon to say if ISIS or Dinesh is behind those attacks. In France, the French Parliament has approved a controversial law strengthening intelligence services. We'll tell you more on that story. This, as the satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo is about to receive a Freedom of Speech award. We'll tell you which organization here in the U.S. has given them that award. An ex-IRA man, Gerald Jock Davison, has been shot dead. Nationwide tours begin in the UK as the party leaders wrap up the election in less than 48 hours. And a new Republican adds his name to the race for the 2016 presidential elections. I'm Jason Miller. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report. All those stories and more, plus Corey Evans.
Thank you, Jay. 40 more migrants are feared dead in the Mediterranean, sure to fan the EU immigration flames. An accident at Chrysler's Detroit factory leaves one worker dead. I have the latest. The stock market's not looking so great today, but additive-free Panera Bread is looking good. Get free coffee? Check. Burn yourself? Check. Sue Starbucks? Check. And Jeremy Clarkson still haunts the production staff at Top Gear. That's all coming up in this edition of your conservative news source. The Evan Miller Report starts now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Public Press Radio. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Tuesday, May the 5th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller. Corey Evan in just a moment with the latest coming out of Nepal tonight regarding those earthquakes. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we start off tonight with the latest out of here in the United States regarding that attempted attack in Texas this weekend at that cartoon convention. Islamic State, or Dinesh, has said it was behind the attack on a Prophet Muhammad cartoon contest in the U.S. state of Texas. It said that two soldiers of the Caliphate carried out the attack at a conference center near Dallas on Sunday. ISIS's Al-Badghin radio news bulletin said the exhibition was portraying negative pictures of the Prophet Muhammad. Both suspects were shot dead after opening fire at the contest on Sunday. According to correspondents, they say it is believed to be the first time that ISIS has claimed to have carried out an attack in the U.S. The White House, however, has said that it was too soon to tell if Dinesh, or the Islamic State group, as it has been quoted to say, was behind the attack in Texas. The ISIS group, as we said, claimed responsibility earlier today. The FBI says the case is still under investigation, and other members of the intelligence community determine if the two assassins had any ties with the ISIS or Dinesh group, according to White House spokesman and BS artist Josh Earnest. When he spoke to reporters, he said it's still too early to say at this point. The ISIS claim marked the first time the extremist group has captured swaths of territory in Syria and Iraq using brutal methods, alleged to have been carried out an attack in the United States. Stay with the Evan Miller Report for the latest on this developing story. We'll bring you the very latest as it becomes available. Over to France now, where the French Parliament has approved a controversial law strengthening the intelligence services with the aim of preventing another Islamic attack, such as the one back in France earlier in January of this year. The law on intelligence gathering, adopted by 438 votes to 86 in the Parliament, was drafted after 3 days of attacks in Paris, as I stated back in January. The socialist government says the law is needed to take account of changes in communications technology, but critics say it's a dangerous extension of mass surveillance. They argue that it gives too much power to the state and threatens the independence of the digital economy. The government says it wants to bring modern surveillance techniques within the law rather than outside any system of control. A new watchdog will oversee the intelligence services, which will have broader powers to look at classified materials and handle complaints from the public. But none of this has satisfied critics of the bill, who range from civil liberties groups to major internet providers. Their main worry is the way French intelligence agencies will be able to collect massive amounts of metadata from the internet, the detail of communication such as times and places rather than content. Critics say this amounts to a mass intrusion of privacy, which in the hands of an unscrupulous government could have worrying consequences. Apart from some dissident voices, both the governing socialists and opposition center-right were in favor. One online advocacy group, Le Quadre de Net, wrote after the vote, quote, "Representatives of the French people have given the Prime Minister the power to undertake massive and limitless surveillance of the population." And ladies and gentlemen, as we pass the Patriot Act after 9/11, I can understand what some of the French people are going to, and some of these critics understand what they're saying in opposition to this. They don't want the same thing to happen as it here in the U.S. when it came to the wiretapping program, that when it came down to the CIA and the FBI wiretapping our phones and emails. So I can understand people's outrage over this bill being passed in France. Well, we hope the French people will speak out vehemently against this, and maybe the government will change their mind, but at this point, with the socialist government in charge, not too much is going to happen, I don't think, in regards to that. Staying in France, the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo is to receive a controversial Freedom of Speech award, at least controversial to some, not controversial to this program, at the Penn Literary Gala in New York today. 6 prominent authors said they would boycott the event, saying it celebrated the magazine's cultural intolerance. Islamists stormed the Charlie Hebdo offices, as we reported on our last story, in Paris in January after the magazine published drawings of the Prophet Muhammad. And of course, Charlie Hebdo's editor-in-chief, Gerald Ballard, and Jean-Baptiste Thoret, a film critic who arrived late for work on the day of the attack, will accept the award. Mr. Thoret has rejected any comparison between the Paris and recent attacks in Dallas. He said, quote, "To be honest, I can imagine the kind of comparison you can make between the Charlie Hebdo attack on January the 7th and this event. But there is nothing. There is no comparison, absolutely no comparison," said Mr. Thoret when he spoke to PBS's Charlie Rose. The film critic added that the attack in Texas was part of an anti-Islamic movement in the U.S. The decision to award the magazine the Freedom of Expression Courage Award to Charlie Hebdo caused 6 high-profile authors, as we reported earlier in the story, to withdraw, including the English patent writer Michael Aujandi. They said Penn, known for defending imprisoned writers, was stepping beyond its traditional rule. In addition, over 100 other writers signed a letter of protest against the award. All right, folks, I'll be back in a couple minutes with an update on a story we brought to you yesterday about Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza being opposed running for a 3rd term. But first, we send it over to Corey Evan. He has the latest on a breaking story out of the Mediterranean, where thousands of men, women, and children have drowned due to the migrant crisis in Europe. Corey, tell us more.
A rubber boat, Jay, was crowded with migrants and deflated and sunk in the Mediterranean, and as many as 40 people apparently drowned before an approaching merchant ship could get to them, witnesses told the humanitarian group Save the Children on Tuesday. This from the New York Times. Counting the latest shipwreck, the death toll for migrants trying to cross the Mediterranean to Europe this year is now more than 1,800. Even so, the number of people attempting the crossing on smuggler boats is rising sharply. The Italian authorities reported that nearly 6,000 people were rescued in the Mediterranean in a 48-hour period over the weekend, including a woman who gave birth to a baby girl in an Italian naval vessel. The situation has become a humanitarian crisis for Europe, especially after an overloaded vessel capsized during a rescue attempt last month, drowning at least 700 people near the Libyan coast. European leaders responded by tripling their budget for the search and rescue and by promising to crack down on traffickers, but critics called the response inadequate. The latest sinking occurred Sunday morning. Survivors who arrived in the Sicilian port of Catania on Tuesday and spoke to Save the Children representatives gave this account. Smugglers launched 2 rubber boats full of migrants from the Libyan coast, and one of them, carrying 105 migrants, was safely rescued at sea by a passing merchant ship. But the second boat, with 197 people, began to steadily lose air until some people crowded near the edges fell into the sea. Giovanna Di Benedetto, the children rep in Catania who spoke to survivors, cautioned that the exact details still needed to be verified by the authorities. And we'll wait for them to do that, and I will bring you those details as soon as they are indeed verified. 6 weeks before Nepal was hit by a magnitude 7.8 earthquake, the country's foreign minister told a global conference on disasters that a major quake in the Kathmandu Valley would likely cause catastrophic loss of life. This from Reuters. With the death toll rising from the April 25th earthquake above 7,500, the warning was pretty much ominous. That's the word I'll use in there because I can't quite pronounce this, but at any rate. Many experts say the outcome would have been worse but for efforts already made to create awareness of the risks and keep people safe. According to the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, Nepalese hospitals that had been strengthened to be more resilient to quakes were able to withstand the shaking, allowing them to continue functioning afterwards. And an aid base opened in March at Kathmandu Airport by the UN with UK funding, plus training for staff and logistics support for Deutsche Post DHL Group, have eased the flow of relief goods. SIDR told the Thomson Reuters Foundation she was quite convinced that initiatives to reduce the risk of disasters in Nepal must have helped limit loss of life in the quake. She noted that community groups had partnered with local government to prepare for disasters, and work had been going on for decades to improve construction and make public infrastructure safer. The National Society for Earthquake Technology in Nepal, for example, has given technical advice in a donor-funded government program to strengthen schools against earthquakes. And it's yet to be seen how much progress will be made in future years, but as progress is made, we will keep an eye on the developments and bring them to you. And the Tenafly, New Jersey, college student jailed for allegedly illegally entering North Korea said in an interview broadcast on Tuesday that he wanted to be arrested and was ready to accept his punishment. This from NJ.com. Won Moon Ju, a South Korean citizen enrolled at New York University, was captured last month after he crossed the border near the Great Wall of China in Dandong, the North State Media Agency reported. It was unclear what specific end Ju reportedly hoped to accomplish. Quote, I thought that as an American permanent resident and South Korean citizen that my entrance could have some good effect, he said in the CNN interview. Ju told the cable network he scaled 2 barbed wire fences, traveled on foot over farmland, and followed a river before North Korean troops arrested him. State media reported on Saturday that the Tenafly High School graduate was detained April 22nd. An NYU spokesman told NJ Advance Media on Saturday that Ju was a junior at NYU's Stern School of Business. Ju was not taking classes in the university.
All right, folks, looks like we lost Corey Evan out there in Los Angeles. And if we can get back to him, we will do so in the program. Apologies for that. We seem to be having a connection issue with our satellite. So if Corey Evan can call back in, we'll get him back right in on the program. Moving on to other international stories making headlines today. Burundi's President Penyar Noskov cannot run for a third term, according to the country's constitutional court. An update on the story that we brought to you yesterday on the program. Under the Constitution, presidents can only be elected to 2 terms in office, but it was argued that his first term does not count as he was appointed by Parliament. The announcement has led to renewed protests in the capital. The Constitutional Court's vice president had earlier reportedly fled the country, citing death threats. At least 12 people have died in what is seen as the most serious unrest since the end of the Civil War back in 2005. Constitutional Court Vice President Silver Notatres said most of his colleagues thought the third-term bid was unconstitutional, but they were under pressure to change their minds, according to the AFP news agency. The president's spokesman, Gervais Abato, told the BBC's Focus on Africa radio program that there were no threats or pressure put on the judges. He said the discussions were private, so there was no way that individuals could be singled out, for their views. After the ruling was announced, more than 500 protesters went on the streets of Mugishi, a southern suburb of the capital Bergame, reports the BBC's Madi Julien, who's in the region. 3 people were killed in the protest in Mugishi on Monday. Live rounds have also been fired near the U.S. Embassy at people demonstrating against the third-term bid. Over to Thailand, where Thai officials say they have found 2 skeletons possibly linked to people smuggling days after the discovery of 26 bodies found in a mass grave. Both skeletons were found in abandoned camps in Phongnang province, the local governor said. One was tied to a tree. Phongnang is several hundred kilometers away from the site in Songlun province where 26 bodies were found last week. 3 Thais and a Burmese national have been... Oh, Thailand. I get that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. He's trying to question my Asian Pacific knowledge. That Thai. Yes, I understand. Thank you very much for the correction. 3 Thais and a Burmese national have been arrested in Thailand on suspicion of human trafficking. The mass grave containing 26 bodies was discovered in an abandoned jungle camp close to the Malaysian border, an area regularly used by people smugglers. Separately, a second camp with at least another 5 graves have been found in the Songgolf province, according to officials speaking today. The area is on a route regularly used by Rohingya Muslims fleeing prosecution in Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. And I do believe we have Corey Evan back here with us, and I'm going to go ahead and send it back over to him briefly, and I'll be back in a minute with the Central African Republican militias to free child soldiers, but we want to send it over to Corey first. He has the latest on what is going on in Greece today. Corey?
Caught me off guard on that one. I was just wrapping up my story from North Korea. Mr. Ju out in North Korea who was jailed there. It's not clear if he was indeed speaking freely to CNN because state media had organized the interview upon CNN's request. But as developments come up, I will bring you the latest as they become available, or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. And now I've got an update from the BBC, if this will work properly. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes it doesn't work, but now it does. Greek ministers have launched a concerted effort to persuade EU officials to release more bailout money as the government runs out of cash. Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis first met his French counterpart before visiting Brussels, while colleagues headed for the European Central Bank. The EU and IMF will not release 7.2 billion euros, about $8 billion, until they're satisfied with Greek plans for economic reform. The EU has now slashed its 2015 growth forecast for Greece from 2.5%, to just 0.5%. The Greek government is desperate to reach a deal with its international creditors before a scheduled billion-dollar debt interest repayment to the IMF on May 12th, but the two sides have yet to agree on labor reforms and pensions. German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble said he doubted whether a deal could be reached in time for a Eurogroup meeting on May 11th. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras spoke to German Chancellor Angela Merkel over the phone Monday night, but a Greek official said only that they had exchanged views on the relevant issues. As his government pushed for a compromise, EU Economic Affairs Commissioner Pierre Moscovici said that in light of the persistent uncertainty, revising the forecast for Greece's growth has been unavoidable. And to think that Mr. Tsipras is discussing these things with Angela Merkel, you can tell that Mr. Tsipras has inherited a load of Merkel. There's the joke I'm trying to make.
Indeed, Corey, indeed. He has inherited a load of Merkel. 2 commies they went out together. Thank you very much for that. All right, over to Central Africa now, where armed groups in the Central African Republic have agreed to release all children that are working with them and end child recruitment, according to the UN. Militias are said to have recruited up to 6,000 to 10,000 children to work as soldiers, messengers, or cooks. The UN Children's Agency, UNICEF, says it now needs to see the agreement put into practice. UNICEF says the CAR conflict has created one of the world's worst and least visible humanitarian crisis. CAR has been racked by violence since a mainly Muslim rebel group seized power back in March 2013. The Salinka group was then ousted, sparking a wave of violent reprisals against the Muslim population, thousands of whom fled their homes. Over to Ireland now, where a former senior IRA figure has been shot dead near Belfast's city centre. Gerald Jock Davison, 47, was shot a number of times at Wells Street in the Markets area in Ireland at about 9 o'clock British Standard Time. Police do not believe dissident Republicans were behind the attack, and they do not believe it was sectarian. It is understood Mr. Davison was involved in the fight in a Belfast bar back in January 2005 that led to the death of Robert McCartney, one of Northern Ireland's most high-profile killings. Mr. Davison's uncle Terence was later acquitted of Mr. McCartney's murder. Appealing for information, Detective Justin Holloway said that this was a cold-blooded murder carried out in broad daylight in a residential area and has no place in the Northern Ireland. He continued to say, "We have detectives in the market area making house-to-house inquiries and seeking to identify witnesses. I would appeal to local people to cooperate with them and give them any information that they have." The detective said Mr. Davison was a grandfather and a high-profile community worker who devoted much of his time to those living in the Markets area. And stay with the Evan Miller Report. If we do have an update on that story, we'll bring it to you. Now, over to the UK elections, where the main party leaders are crisscrossing the UK, appealing to undecided voters in key seats as the election campaign enters its final 2 days. Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron said the SNP-backed Labour government was a chilling and calamitous prospect. Meanwhile, Labour's Ed Miliband said he would not end up borrowing more than the Tories if he formed the next government. Lib Dem leader Nick Clegg warned of a second election before Christmas if there was a minority Tory or Labour government. And UKIP's leader Nigel Farage spent the day in Kent saying he hopes to win for his party after taking out a 2-page advertisement in the newspaper the Daily Telegraph, urging people to vote with their heart. I'll get it right sooner or later, ladies and gentlemen. In other election news today, David Cameron said he would put the country first if he failed to win an outright majority. Ed Miliband said he did not accept an Institute for Fiscal Studies assessment that the debt would be £90 higher in a 2019 to 2020 budget under his plans than under the Conservatives if he won the election. He also made a plea for people to vote Labour to save the NHS. Nick Clegg said an EU referendum was not a coalition red line for the Lib Dems. UKIP candidate Robert Blay was suspended after being filmed apparently threatening to shoot a Conservative rival, while another of the party's candidates apologized for offensive remarks about an Islamic female journalist. The SNP suspended 2 of their members of their party following scuffles at a rally held by the Scottish Labour leader in Glasgow. The Green Party urged voters to send a message on climate change today, which we know is a load of baloney, on the Evan Miller Report. And Lucy Powell, the vice chair of Labour's general election campaign, denied suggesting Ed Miliband could break his election pledges. And Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party said a commission of the union would be a red line in any post-elections. Recent polls suggest the election is still too close to call, and in the final days of the parties are focusing on their core messages amid speculation about post-election deals if there is a hung parliament. Stay with the Evan Miller Report and SHR Media for the latest on the UK British elections. We have the very latest starting tomorrow night at 1 a.m. Eastern. That's on May the 7th. That's 10 p.m. Pacific on May the 6th. And on May the 7th at 6 a.m. British Standard Time on shrmedia.com as we bring you the latest on voting day and election day on the UK elections. Stay tuned to SHR Media for the very latest. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take an ad break here on the program. When we return this evening on the program, surf's up here in California. Hundreds of spectators have been gathering to watch surfers brave 15-foot swells at the Wedge, a break in Newport Beach known for its powerful surf. We'll tell you how those waves are coming off the California coast and where you can catch a wave on tonight's program. In the political news here in the U.S. tonight, the U.S. has approved a ferry service between Cuba and Florida. Republicans add a new candidate to the 2016 presidential race, and the Senate gets a veto from President Obama on the likes of Obamacare. We have all those stories and more when we return on tonight's Evan Miller Report. Plus, Corey Evan has the business news.
Yes, in addition to covering what's shaping the markets, I have one place that you're going to want to consider for luncheons, Panera, and you'll understand why when we come back. Plus, in lawsuits across America, not only is Manny Pacquiao getting sued, but so is, apparently, the PS4 makers, among others. Yes, and Top Gear's being investigated by yet another company over something Jeremy Clarkson said. I mean, you're beating a dead horse here, but you'll hear all the details on it nonetheless. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report. I'm Corey Evan. Take 2 minutes, go get a cookie, and come on back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Radio.
Let's get back to the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media and Pundit Press Radio.
And welcome welcome back to the Evan Miller Report on the SHR Media Network. I'm Jason Miller. Corey Evan with the national news in just a couple moments. But first, a story making world headlines here in the United States. Hundreds of spectators have been gathering to watch surfers brave 15-foot swells at the Wedge, a break in Newport Beach, California, known for its powerful surf. But these waves are not standard for this area. They are the product of a major storm churning thousands of miles away off the coast of New Zealand, of all places. The epic surf has been slamming beaches in Southern California since Sunday, and lifeguards have been busy watching over the surfers and boogie boarders who have flocked to the area. In Newport Beach, lifeguards have reported 15-foot waves yesterday afternoon, and over the weekend they rescued up to 17 people from the dangerous conditions. According to weather officials in the Southern California region, they have issued a high surf advisory that will remain in effect at least, until at least the late evening of tonight. The advisory issued by the National Weather Service warns that some waves may continue to reach 15 feet in height. It also warns of powerful rip currents which could pull swimmers out to sea, which may be present. Over the weekend, about 55,000 visitors visited Newport Beach alone, but those numbers dwindled on Monday. Still, officials have dispatched extra lifeguards to the beach because of those large waves. Lifeguards and meteorologists are warning those braving the surf about the possibility of so-called sneaker waves, which are large waves that can appear with little or no warning. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you know how to surf and you know how to be safe, you can go catch yourself one of those 15-foot waves. If you're out here in Southern California, you want to go to one of the beaches. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to send it over to Corey Evan. He got the rest of the day's national news.
Jay, one of Ohio's most wanted and long sought-after fugitives, Frank Freshwaters, there's a name for you, was arrested in Melbourne, Florida Monday after an extensive manhunt. This from WOIO Cleveland. Was involved in a deadly auto-pedestrian accident. Freshwaters pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 1 to 20 years in prison. Initially, Freshwater's sentence was suspended and he was given probation for 5 years. 2 years later, on February 19th of 59, he was found guilty of violating his probation and his original sentence of 1 to 20 was imposed. He served time in Mansfield but quickly earned the trust of the prison officials and was moved to the Sandusky Honor Farm to finish his sentence. On September 30th that year, Freshwaters escaped. Freshwaters thought his luck ran out when the Kanawha County Sheriff's Office in Charleston, West Virginia, arrested him on the Ohio warrant in October 1975. But the governor of the state of West Virginia refused to extradite Freshwaters to Ohio. He was released and again went into hiding. When the new U.S. Marshals Cold Case Unit was established 3 months ago, the Ohio Adult Parole Authority requested assistance on locating Freshwaters, one of their oldest cases. After weeks of investigating, the Cold Case Unit located Freshwaters living under the alias of William Harold Cox in Melbourne, Florida. Monday afternoon, he was arrested there at his home on William Harold Cox, C-O-X, for those of you trying to spell. Yeah, he admitted his true identity and was found guilty of violating his probation, and his original sentence of 1 to 20 years was imposed. Happy ending on that one. But not so happy ending for this little accident. Authorities, according to the Washington Post, say a worker has died in an industrial accident at a Chrysler plant in Detroit. Detroit Fire Chief Dale Bradley says the 53-year-old man was crushed in a press shortly after 7 a.m. Tuesday. Yeah, I know, right?
Ouch.
At the Jefferson North Assembly plant and died as a result of his injuries. Fiat Chrysler Automobile said in a statement that the employee was killed at the facility's wastewater treatment plant and that the company is working with local officials on the investigation. The worker's identity isn't being released. But I will reveal the identity of this criminal mastermind, or mistress mind, I should say. 22-year-old Haley King, a University of South Carolina student, was arrested by police last week after confessing to having spit in and dousing her roommate's food with Windex. She was charged with unlawful...
Come on, really?
Yeah, I know, right? Add insult to an injury.
Windows, not food. Man.
Yeah, anyone who
really got
ingests
something
that...
to piss her off.
Yeah, definitely. And let's read on.
She was, of course, charged with unlawful and malicious tampering with human drug product or food and could face 20 years if convicted. Following multiple altercations, WIS-TV reports King's 2 roommates felt it necessary to set up a hidden camera in their home. And their instincts were right. On the 4th of February, the cameras filmed King milling about their shared kitchen, pacing back and forth from the cabinets to the fridge, where she appears to spit in food containers. And at one point, it looked like she poured window cleaner in some food. One roommate claims to have eaten some of the contaminated food before seeing the video, the AP reports. The roommates, who haven't been identified, turned the video over to Columbia PD, who called King into a station for questioning, where she apparently confessed. According to court reports obtained by NBC News, King posted a $5,000 bond the next day. The video and subsequent arrest is apparently the concluding act in a long-running roommate drama. The two roommates have been trying to get King to move out for weeks, but she refused to leave. Yeah, when your roommates tell you to get on out of there, I'd say instead of raising a big stink, which is going to cost you $5,000, just get the heck out of there already.
Well, you know what the weird thing is about this story? The television station you mentioned, WIS, if you add an E to it, it's wise. She was not wise. W-I-S-E. Wise up, young lady. Now you spend in jail time for poisoning your roommates. Dumb move.
Yes, and this particular spelling lesson from Jason is brought to you in part by Brandomaniacs. Nutritionally, it lacks, and it attacks your digestive tracts. Okay, and it sounds like it's digesting Jay's digestive tracts right now. So I think we better move on. That ends my national news.
Shall we?
Good idea. Right, the Dow was down 142 points. That's no laughing matter at 17,928. The Nasdaq followed suit, down 77 at 49.39, and S&P 500, ditto, down 25 points at 20.89. A surge in imports, though, lifted the U.S. trade deficit in March to its highest level in nearly 6.5 years, suggesting the economy contracted in the first quarter. Growth, however, is regaining momentum as other data on Tuesday showed activity in the services sector, which accounts for more than 2/3 of the economy, accelerated to a 5-month high in April. The Commerce Department said the trade deficit jumped 43.1% to $51.4 billion in March, the largest since October 2008. The rise was the biggest since December 1996. The surge came as imports snapped back after being held down by a now settled labor dispute at key West Coast ports. Walt Disney reported second quarter profit that beat analyst estimates, bolstered by improving results at its theme park and merchandise units in a period that lacked a major movie blockbuster. Earnings at the world's largest entertainment company totaled $1.23 a share, excluding some items, according to a statement Tuesday to the Chicago Tribune. That compares with $1.10 a share average of analysts' estimates compiled by Bloomberg. Sales rose 7% to $12.5 billion, above the $12.3 billion average projection. So that's a good thing. Folks have not let it go from Frozen just yet. And Panera, the American soup and sandwich chain that helped pioneer the country's migration to fresher, healthier-seeming fast food, wants to be even fresher, according to QZ.com. Today, the company publicly published a no-no list of artificial additives, including colors, flavors, preservatives, and sweeteners that are banned from its restaurants as of today in the U.S. Its rollout date in Canada is yet to be determined. The restaurant says it will remove more than 150 ingredients, including aspartame, which was taken out of Diet Pepsi last month, and azotic carbonamide, I think that's how I pronounce it. It's a yoga mat chemical, so I don't blame him for taking that one out, as well as old health foes like high fructose corn syrup and lard. The move is part of a clean ingredients initiative launched last year, which has included reducing antibiotics use in its meats and improving treatment of animals. Consumer activists differ on the safety of some of the ingredients Panera chose to remove. The Center for Science in the Public Interest, for instance, said it was happy to see Yellow 5 and 6 and other additives taken off the menus, but that removing others is more about public relations than public health, Jay. Your thoughts?
Well, speak of public relations, I don't mind them taking the chemicals out per se, but my more of an issue is the recent menu changes. They are doing some menu changes at Panera that I'm not exactly happy about, and I will be more than man enough to admit on this story that I am a Panera goer. I go to Panera quite frequently, and I happen to stop at a Panera location this past Saturday on my way back home, traveling home from the Eagle Forum conference, and was disappointed to hear that their chocolate duet walnut cookie is going to be taken off their menu. I was sorry to hear. Yeah, one of the best cookies you can have. It's one of those nice dark chocolate cookies with a little with walnuts mixed into it. And
yeah, because dark chocolate and walnuts is actually somewhat healthy according to research.
Absolutely, and they decided to discontinue that story and bring in a new small Oreo-sized cookie with little caramel stuck inside the cookie and make it to look like an Oreo cookie. And
yes, so, that does sound like a public relations thing more than public health.
But just to state that the chemical thing is not the only thing they're doing. They are doing some changes on their menu, and that change on their menu I don't exactly agree with. Now,
if you want to file a formal complaint, Jay, just write to CEO Ron Shaich. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Shaich.
Well, I've actually spoken to Panera officials about this, and I am supposed to be getting back to someone within that someone is supposed to contact me regarding this issue, so I'm hoping to hear back from them soon on this issue.
Ditto, now that I hear they're taking that off the menu.
Yeah, and I will give you an update on that if I do receive that. And of course, Panera, of course, a big time outfit here in California, as well as probably in most of the United States as well. And as Corey Evan mentioned, they are looking to expand to Canada. All right, that's Corey Evan. He has the business news. Thank you very much for that, ladies and gentlemen. And now it's on to some political news. But first, we relate this political news to the recent decision between Cuba and the U.S. repairing relations. This is regarding ferries that are being set to run between the U.S. state of Florida and Cuba for the first time in more than 50 years after the U.S. government approved new services. Services between the two countries stopped when the U.S. imposed the trade embargo on Cuba back in 1960. But Washington, D.C. has announced the restoration of diplomatic ties in December last year. As we have reported, the U.S. government has now lifted the ban, and 4 ferry companies say they have been given licenses to ferry people between the two countries. Joseph Hinston, president of the Miami-based United Americans Shipping Services, told AFP news agency, quote, "Today's action was a great step forward." Havana Ferry Partners of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, also said it had its license. This is an historical event thanks to President Barack Obama, to whom we are very grateful for his leadership, the firm wrote on its Facebook page. Well, looks like we know who they're supporting. Make sure if you're down in Florida and you want to go down to Cuba, don't support them. Matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to be so bold as to say, just don't go to Cuba at all. What do you need down there that we don't exactly need up there? Oh, wait. Corey needs his Cuban cigars for one of his uncles down in San Diego.
I don't smoke, and neither does my uncle.
It was a joke.
Yeah, but this is no joke. I sent you some emojis because I predict that there's going to be yet more immigration problems if all of this does come to fruition.
Yeah, certainly does. Well said, Corey. All right, now on to the D.C. news briefly. Tonight, Republican Mike Huckabee lodged a bid for his party's 2016 presidential nomination. Today, zeroing in on the plight of blue-collar American workers who have been left behind, according to some, in the country's rebound from the Great Recession. The 59-year-old former Arkansas governor and former host of the popular Fox News television show is considered a long shot in the widening race to represent the Republican Party in the November 2016 presidential elections. He is the 6th Republican to make a formal run. Huckabee's emphasis on America's workers marks an attempt to expand his base beyond social conservative voters who the former Southern Baptist pastor rallied to an early surprise victory in the 2008 White House race. Huckabee made clear he wants the Christian right behind him again in 2016, setting up a competition with like-minded rivals like Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, but he spent much of the day fiery populist speech on people struggling to make ends meet. And ladies and gentlemen, a note for those of you who listen to this program on a regular basis to our Global Socialism segments, we should let you know, ladies and gentlemen, that Mike Huckabee is a supporter of, as Corey Evan puts it, the common crud. So him along with Senator Ted Cruz, who has still not answered our questions regarding his recent donations to that pro-Common Core school in Texas, is on our list of people we wouldn't support because they support the likes of Common Core. So, ladies and gentlemen, you know what to do. You know what to vote in the 2016 election. We leave it up to you. All right, other political news briefly tonight before we go to our Global Socialism segment. Briefly tonight, the Senate today sustained President Obama's veto of a bill that would have scrapped a new government rule on union elections. It marked the second time that Congress has failed to override an Obama veto since Republicans took control of the House and Senate in January. The Senate fell short earlier in overriding Obama's veto of legislation calling for construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. Proponents of the new National Labor Relations Board rules say they are modest reforms that would simplify and streamline union elections, limiting the ability of companies to drag out the certification process and buy time to fight the union. The rule would also give unions the telephone numbers and email addresses of workers to make it easier for organizers to communicate with workers. The new rules went into effect last month. The vote in the Senate was 96-3 and did not reflect Republican support for the legislation that they passed over Democratic opposition. Instead, it came on a parliamentary maneuver that reflected recognition by Republicans, who had 56 seats in the 100-member Senate, that they lacked the two-thirds majority to override a veto. All right, folks, Global Socialism tonight, and we're not running the theme due to time tonight, so I will be brief on my stories tonight. Missouri lawmakers voted today to remove several thousand families from a welfare program by imposing shorter time limits for people to receive the benefits, overriding a veto by the state's Democratic governor. The new law will reduce Missouri's lifetime limit for the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Cash Assistance Program from 5 years to 3 years and 9 months starting in January. The law also imposes stricter work requirements. And health insurers would be prevented from covering the cost of abortions except in medical emergencies under a bill approved on Tuesday by Republicans-dominated Texas Senate. Private health insurance plans and those offered through the Affordable Care Act marketplace could still provide coverage for abortions in cases where the woman's life is at risk. Republican backers of Senate Bill 575 said its purpose to prevent consumers morally opposed to abortion from paying for the procedure. Most Democrats oppose the bill because it does not include exceptions for cases of rape or fetal abnormalities. And now I send it over to Corey Evan, and he's going to finish off tonight's Global Socialism segment. Corey?
Yes, I will. And earlier we were going off on our tangent about Cuba. Cuban President Raul Castro's daughter Mariela, a lawmaker and gay rights activist, said Tuesday her organization would hold symbolic gay weddings this weekend in a call for equal rights. This according to AFP news agency. Castro, sexologist and head of the National Center for Sex Education, said the organization would hold celebrations of love for gay couples on Saturday. The 52-year-old lawmaker has fought unsuccessfully to legalize gay marriage, tackling deep-rooted discrimination in a country where homosexuals were formerly prosecuted under her uncle Fidel's government after he came to power in the '59 Cuban Revolution. The symbolic weddings will be held as part of Cuba's 8th National Day Against Homophobia, which Castro has staunchly promoted. She said herself had a Catholic priest perform a celebration of love ceremony for her and her husband, Italian national Paolo Titolo, because she did not want to have a traditional Catholic wedding. She didn't see how many couples would take part in Saturday's ceremony, but I say it's all a load of garbage. And if I could get that theme, that's all I've got on my end. If we could have that theme. It's the waiting game. There we go. So, is there no safe place for traditional marriage to survive? Is there no fake hobo Obama won't give a handout to? And is there a such thing as too much cheese? I don't think so! Stay tuned for developments in our continuing battle against global socialism.
Corey Evan with the cheesy details of socialism. Thank you very much for that. And ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for lawsuits.
And now it's time for lawsuits across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evan.
Thank you. As always, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits Across America is now in session. First item on the docket, according to ABC News Los Angeles, a Raleigh, North Carolina police officer who was given a free cup of coffee by Starbucks is now suing the company after he spilled it and got burned. In the lawsuit, Matthew Core, a lieutenant... Yeah, I know, right? This is ridiculous already. Matthew Core, a lieutenant with the Raleigh PD, said the lid popped off the cup of coffee he ordered at the Starbucks on Peace Street in January 2012, and the cup collapsed. Core claims the incident caused such severe stress that it activated his Crohn's disease, which resulted in surgery to remove part of his intestine. Core was joined by his wife in court Monday. She's also a plaintiff in the lawsuit, claiming loss of her intimate partner. Oh, brother.
That's baloney. It doesn't even make any sense. I don't mean to be monotonous yet repetitive. Come on.
Yeah, once you've done your breeding, that's monotonous yet repetitive. But at any rate, Core initially sued the maker of the coffee cup too, but the only defendant left in the case is Starbucks. People buying coffee at the same Starbucks Monday say they were surprised by the lawsuit. Jury selection in the case is underway. Starbucks said it can't comment directly on the case, but did say, quote, "At Starbucks, the safety of our customers and employees is our top priority, and we take our obligation to provide safe products very seriously," unquote. Yeah, there's a little label on the side of it that says caution, contents hot. They're not joking.
Apparently he wasn't thinking about keeping the peace on Peace Street. He disturbed it.
Apparently not. Yes, unfortunately. But speaking of disturbing the peace, Wells Fargo has victimized its California customers with illegal bank tactics, just such as having accounts open in their names without their permission so employees can reach sales quotas. A city attorney. Wells Fargo bankers were allegedly encouraged to do whatever it takes to meet sales goals, including withdrawing money from customers' unauthorized accounts to pay Wells Fargo fees and placing customers into collections when the unauthorized withdrawals go unpaid, city attorney Michael Feuer alleges in the lawsuit filed on Monday on behalf of the people of California. Filed on behalf of the state of California and LA's County Superior Court, the lawsuit claims some Wells Fargo employees even pressured their own family members and friends to sign up for accounts, to the point that employees say they've tapped out their network. Wells Fargo has 6,200 banking locations in 39 states and D.C. The lawsuit doesn't name customers or allege how many people may have been affected by the alleged practices. Wells Fargo and Company, headquartered in San Fran, said in a statement that it would vigorously defend itself against the allegations, as they typically do. And Manny Pacquiao's attorney said Tuesday he intends to move to dismiss what he describes as a frivolous class action suit filed against the boxer and his primary handlers in Nevada by two Las Vegas residents, according to the LA Times. As first reported by ESPN's Darren Rovell, the lawsuit seeks in excess of $5 million from Pacquiao, his manager Michael Conks, and his promoter Top Rank Inc. for allegedly fraudulently covering up Pacquiao's right shoulder injury before his Saturday night loss to Floyd Mayweather Jr. The lawsuit, according to Rovell, alleges that the parties failed to disclose the injury to the Nevada State Athletic Commission and worked to keep it a secret from fans who paid $2,500 to attend the fight in person and $100 to watch an HD broadcast of Saturday's pay-per-view bout. To some, that didn't come because of a cable blackout, but at any rate. Privately, key members of Pacquiao's team said Sunday that they feared such a move would come, one saying, "People will sue over anything." Pay-per-view sales should be in excess of $300 million, and Las Vegas bookmakers told the Times last week that an estimated $50 to $80 million would be bet on the bout, with a slight underdog, Pacquiao, a popular wager, despite the largest wagers being on Mayweather. And on that note, I will declare today's lawsuits across America case dismissed.
Corey Evan with tonight's oxen of lawsuits across America. And Corey, it looks like the likes of the former Top Gear host, he's not finished yet, is he?
No, he's still haunting them to this day. BBC Two's Top Gear is being investigated by watchdog Ofcom over the use of the word pikey in an episode broadcast in February last year. The BBC Trust rejected the Traveller Movement's original complaint in March, but the group have brought it to Ofcom. It was sparked by a placard featuring the words Pikey's Peak, which host Jeremy Clarkson put up after a race between 1980s hatchbacks. Clarkson has since been axed from the show after a fracas with the producer. During the episode broadcast on February 2nd of last year, Clarkson had been ridiculing co-presenter Richard Hammond's choice of a Vauxhall Nova where the term was used, which I believe is like the Chevrolet Nova, if slightly smaller. But that's all just common knowledge to me. But at any rate, Top Gear was cleared by the Editorial Standards Committee of the BBC Trust over the comment earlier this year. It acknowledged the word pikey derived from the word turnpike and was therefore related to travelers, but said there was no intended racist reference. This, it said, meant many Top Gear viewers would not necessarily associate with the gypsy and traveler communities. It also noted that the placard was a deliberate pun on the U.S. racecourse Pikes Peak, which had been referenced earlier in the show's script. Well, I thank you very much for referencing us, Britain. But anyway, a statement from the Traveller Movement welcomed the decision and said it hoped Ofcom's investigation was thorough. Yeah, anything at the BBC is going to tend to be quite thorough these days, especially after the Jimmy Savile incidents.
Yes. Indeed.
And on that note, that is your entertainment report for today. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow. Till then, I'm Corey Evan. Back to you, Jay.
Thank you very much, Corey. Corey Evan with the Miniature Entertainment News segment tonight. Not a lot happening, I don't think, in the entertainment world. Hopefully we'll get some more entertainment news to distract your mind.
Yeah, I think that's because the Avengers are the ones that took the box office this weekend in what's said to be the second biggest opening of all time.
Well, I tend to argue with that point, but of course, money is money, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're going to go see the film, I can't argue with box office figures, and Corey Evan knows those figures better than I do. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Evan Miller Report for this Tuesday, May the 5th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller.
And I'm Corey Evan. Follow us on Facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. You'll be glad you did. For all of us here at SHR Media, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. Coming up next from the BBC, the weather from the Met Office.
Meteorologist Thomas Schaffernacker. Let's get you up to date with the weather forecast across North America for the middle part of the week. And the heat is still on across the deep southeastern seaboard through the central states and even up into central parts of Canada. But there's a clash between the warm air you can see in the east here and the cooler air in the west, and we have some potential for severe weather here. We've already had nasty thunderstorms across parts of Texas and New Mexico through the Midwest as well, and more bad weather you can see to come here across this central northern portion of the US and into Canada too. Let's have a look at the Pacific side of Canada. First of all, Vancouver there around about the mid-teens with 1 or 2 showers for Vancouver. Further south you go into California, it's bone dry, lots of sunshine. Not necessarily what you want because, of course, it's a massive drought here. You need all the water you can get. The other side of the US, across the Atlantic seaboard here, around the upper 70s for Washington, towards the south in Florida. Look at all of that rainfall. Not a great time to be in Florida. Potential for thunderstorms. It's really nasty out in the Bahamas as well. That's all come from Cuba, that thundery weather. Now, Thursday and Friday, Atlanta's looking sunny and hot. Temperatures will be in the low 80s. Miami stays showery and thundery, and cool in Los Angeles with maybe just a small shower chance.
You've been listening to the Evan Miller Report. For more information about today's program, go to shrmedia.com or thepunditpress.com. Thanks for listening. Hope you tune in again next time.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.